Alright, so we're gonna start looking at our next chapter, which is actually the appendix. It's Appendix A, so it's after Chapter 12 in our table of content. So ultimately, in a nutshell, real quick, normally, like when it comes to like the CPM, if you guys have noticed, well, maybe not because it's only the second year, like the stuff from Algebra 1 shows up in the review preview of geometry, and then in Algebra 2 you get that Algebra 1 and that geometry mixed into Algebra 2. So when we rolled out CPM last year, like whatever class you were in is where you were. So if you last year you guys were all like in the geometry class, so you never got the Algebra 1 CPM material. And granted, I mean, it's you ended up getting it, but probably in a little bit different format with the old curriculum than this new curriculum. So they create these little appendices for us to look at, especially if we didn't go through that whole progression from Algebra 1 to geometry to Algebra 2. So it's kind of like you put a little pause after Chapter 1, and then you do Appendix A. And then you kind of go back, we'll go back and do Chapter 2, Chapter 3, Chapter 4, that kind of type of thing. So when it comes to finding it in the table of contents, just know that you got to scroll down to after Chapter 12. And it's set up the exact same way like the first chapter. It's just whoosh, down by the bottom. Sound like fun? All right. So, whoops. Oh, we'll just do it this way. Can I move this guy down? No. Well, we're just going to put it up here. So we're going to do our A.1.1. And we're going to take a little bit of notage, kind of do a couple little problems together. So we're going to represent exponential growth. And maybe in biology class, you might remember talking about like exponential growth and exponential decay. Kind of coming back to you a little bit, maybe. So that's what we got going on for this first little section. So I believe you guys have probably all read the book Mice of Men in your English class. I think you guys do that in sophomore year. I think you guys read the book. Is it freshman? Yeah, I think it is. I think you're right. I believe it is freshman year. Yep. So just a quick little refresher. There were two friends in the book of Mice and Men. There was Lenny and George. And Lenny and George wanted to live off the land, so they thought that they could raise rabbits, and they could eat the rabbits, sell the rabbits, have more rabbits, and be able to live off the land. So there's actually a mathematical problem that ties into our Mice and Men and our little rabbit problem. They ultimately want to make the most amount of money and the largest number of rabbits. So when they started off with 2 rabbits, and they found out that in each month following, those rabbits have 2 babies. And then we're going to suppose that every month afterwards, like each pair of rabbits has 2 babies. So with our little team, we want to sit there and kind of determine how many rabbits Lenny and George will have after one year, so 12 months. So we're just going to represent this situation by looking at a diagram, looking at a table, and then maybe able to explain in words kind of what's going on. So we're not going to come up with the equation for this exponential growth or decay, but I guess it's going to be growth, right? Because we're having more rabbits. And that's going to kind of come like a little bit in the future. So we're going to make a little diagram, make a little table, and see what we can kind of come up with. Sound like a plan? All right. So my rabbits are made of X's because I could not draw a rabbit. Right? So when we started, we had these two little rabbits, right? And those rabbits had more rabbits, didn't they? So those two rabbits, they said like had another set of rabbits, right? So we're gonna do months. We're gonna do a table at the same time. We're gonna go with babies. Instead of looking at like the total number of rabbits that we have, we're just gonna look at how many new ones end up coming out of all of this. So we're going to sit there and say that each X is our pair of rabbits. So like this little pair of rabbits, they're going to have two. This rabbit's going to have two, and this one's going to have two. And we're not going to go through all of the males and the females. We're just going to sit there and be like, each one of these represents a pair, and so each one of them is like a male, or they're a male and a female. It's a 50-50 shot of being a boy or a girl, even for us. Like, even if you come from a family of 4 boys or 4 girls, there was a 50-50 chance of you being either a boy or a girl, right? So we're going to sit there and say the same thing when it comes to our rabbits. There was a 50-50 chance, and by the miracles of nature, they literally came out 50-50. So just to make it nice and easy when it comes to our problem, like this would be the standard case, right, with no other like little other issues going on. Sound good? All right. And then this little guy, this pair is going to have 2, and this one's going to have 2. So in our first month, we ended up having like 4 new rabbits. And then in the second month, how many rabbits did we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. These ones have 2. These ones have 2. These ones have 2. These ones have 2. These ones had 2. Uh-oh, running out of room. So in our third month, we end up with 16. So I wonder what happens in our fourth month. Because the original 2, right, this would have been month 0. Because they just started, they didn't have any. Right? So you had to start somewhere. So then those pair each have 2. How many do you think we're going to get for fourth month? Running out of ink, guys. Uh-oh, yep. Did you count all of those ones? I think I heard somebody say 32. Good job. So what do you think is going to happen in the fifth month? How many do you think we're going to have? In the sixth month? 7. How many we got to go to? we got to figure out how many rabbits we have in 12 months. Yes. 8,172? 92. Did you guys all get the same thing? Yes. Say it again. Oh, yes. So in other words, we're doubling? Yeah. So we started with how many? We started with those original 2. Well, that was after the first month. Because we started with 2, but those 2 would have been like like if you think, when you start, it's the beginning of the month, so it would be like month 0. Think about when you're born. When you're born, are you 1? Does that make sense? Yeah. So, yeah. So we started with 2 rabbits. Right, then we doubled afterwards. Yep. So we can kind of keep going through if we wanted to and keep doubling that number until we get to 12 months. Anybody else get 8,192 new rabbits? It's a lot of rabbits in a year, right? All right. All right. Excuse me. So George and Lenny had to kind of think of a scenario when it comes to all of these rabbits, and looking at different breeds of rabbits, they reproduce differently. So they had to kind of come up with, a little business strategy when it comes to finding out what's the right rabbit in order to have to make the most, to be able to live off the lay of the land. So they did their research. They went to rabbits.com. And while they were at rabbits.com, they were looking at different breeds of rabbits and how they reproduce. And so they ended up coming up with 3 different scenarios or cases. So we had the first case, the case that we did in a year of getting 8,192 rabbits. The other option was there was this breed of rabbits where if they bought 10 rabbits, then each pair has 2 babies per month. But they started off with 10 rabbits instead of just the 2 rabbits that we started off with. Or case 3, these rabbits, if you had 2 rabbits to start with, but every pair end up having 4 babies. So they have more babies, but they were more expensive, so they could only afford 2 to start with. And the fourth case was they could start off with 2 rabbits, but each pair of babies each pair has 6 babies per month. So your guys' job today is to kind of come up with either that table and that diagram, and they want us to figure out making that table for 5 months for each one of those 3 situations, and then being able to look at that data and figure out what's the best case for a whole year. Case 1 that we did together, case 2, 3, or 4. So that's your goal today, is to figure out which case would be the best situation for George and Lenny in their rabbit business. Are you up to the business challenge? You guys ready to be businessmen and women in here? We're going into the rabbit business. I need to know. This is also in your guys' book. Like I said, if we see if I can pull it up. It might let me. When you guys pull up your CPM book online on the table of contents, you're going to scroll down until you get to Appendix A. And then we're doing 1.1. Bless you. And then we talked about 2. On 3, we drew the diagram. We came up with our numbers. So now we're on to A3. So this here is the one that we're working on.